Hello and welcome to the program. 1 year ago, Russia released political prisoners Ilmi, Umerov and Akhtem Chyihoz, representatives of the Mejlis of the Crimean Tatar People. Now today, both men believe that the repressions against Crimean Tatars and Ukrainians in Crimea are intensifying. To explain on this topic, we're joined today in our studio by Emine Dzhaparova. She is the first Deputy Minister of Information Policy of Ukraine. Hello and thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you for welcoming me.
So today marks this 1 year, the release of these political prisoners. What is the situation today of Crimean Tatars and Crimean and political prisoners in Crimea?
Well, the situation is not getting better, obviously, so it's even getting worse. But relating to this first year of release, actually, what I would like to say is actually that, from one hand, by all the means of repression, tortures, kidnappings, political persecutions, fines, political cases, saboteurs or kind of claiming to be saboteurs, these different means of repression, the Russian Federation, by occupying Crimea, from one hand is squeezing out the Crimean Tatars, the Ukrainians, the citizens of Ukraine, the leadership, the Crimean Tatar leadership and the Mejlis as the so-called cabinet of ministers, let's say, the executive power of Crimean Tatar national movement. It's now banned, so thus it is now, it's been acting in Kiev. So from one hand, the occupying authorities or the special services, they are squeezing out Crimean Tatar leadership to the mainland of Ukraine, out of Crimea. And from another hand, the most cynical thing is that by propaganda means, by Crimean Tatar TV channel Millet that was launched in 2015, right after, in a year after occupation and funded by the Russian budget, by the means of the journalists of this TV channel, they are discrediting the leadership, saying that these are the fleas, that these are the leaders that are running away from their own people, that are earning their political capital using the sufferings of Crimean Tatars, you know, this kind of very weird and cynical propaganda being promoted by not only this Crimean Tatar TV channel Millet, but also other national and local media outlets in Crimea.
So they're using basically fake Crimean Tatar outlets to spread that.
Yeah, so it's kind of, if we go back to Crimea now, so it's a military base. The main thing is that we don't have to have an illusion of what has Crimea turned to. So it has turned to the military base. Every single project that is being shown to the whole international community, glorifying the wealth of Russian Federation in Crimea as a showroom, it's actually about the military cause behind. Even take the breach. I mean, it's just for the main factor to get the Russian army there, or to block the Ukraine in the Black Sea or in Azov Sea, which we see today, or the roads that they've been actively building up, also with this military cause, or the schools or kindergartens that they actively also build up. I think that by having hundreds of thousands of security services, bureaucrats, army servicemen brought to the Crimea from the Russian mainland, schools and kindergartens has been built up for the children of those security services or personnel, you know. So what I believe that...
so are you saying there is a replacement, basically, of population?
Yeah, I mean, there is. One of the military crimes, actually, in Crimea is that first, there is recruitment in the army of the citizens of Ukraine, conscription to the army, which is prohibited by all different conventions and international law. And the second is the replacement, because whenever the occupation has happened, you could not replace civilians to the occupied territories. And unfortunately, is that what we see, that starting from the teachers, mainly of Russian language, you know, right teachers, the ones who know how to teach Russian language, and not only the Russian language, because I have my brother, he's 10 years old, and he's been educated in the Kurd school, and every single 5 minutes before the class of the Russian literature or language is being started with this political agitation. When the teacher brought from the Russian mainland starts saying that, comparing on how bad it used to be with Ukraine and now how good it is with Russian Federation. So unfortunately, this is the false reality that is being actively built up by Russia, this information bubbles about happy life. And what is the main, and I really want our viewers to understand, so if you're an average person and you travel to Crimea just as a tourist.
Without any political means?
If you're not the expert, if you don't have a chance to find out other things that are happening, is there any chance that you would see the house search or the political persecution, the political prisoners that are in the prisons? Is there any chance if you're a tourist? Of course, no. Of course, if you travel to Crimea, you will see this beautiful Black Sea, this beautiful sun, no war. So you could have the feeling that yes, it's okay. I see how the roads have been built up, or the schools, or still people there keep on living, smiling and keep on living actually. So this is actually something that the Russian propaganda has been actively using, saying that yes, there is a happy life, people are happy, there is life, but there is no chance. If you watch Russian TV, to find out the different side of the coin, which is about sufferings of thousands of people in Crimea who suffer because they because they can't express their views, because they would be imprisoned just for the post in Facebook or any kind of social media. If they think or potentially could consider Crimea as a Ukrainian territory, they could be imprisoned or could be fined or whatever. So unfortunately, if you're a tourist, you could not feel this other reality, and this is something that has been unfortunately showed as a false reality.
Well, there are certain things that Russian propaganda can't hide. I'm thinking about Armyansk, for example, which is a huge ecological catastrophe, which arrived also because of maybe negligence and some sort of droughts and all this problem. Russian propaganda can't hide this. Is it sustainable for Russia, this situation? Until which point will Russia be able to hide that kind of?
Again, let me be quite clear on that point, is that according to the international law, the occupying state has been responsible for the humanitarian situation on the occupying territory, and thus Russia has been fully responsible for every single thing that has been happening in Crimea in terms of the people or humanitarian situation. So in case, but the thing is that what they do, if we go to 2014, when the occupation happened, actually, they brought the Russian army first and then imitated the referendum, and they claim that it was a true vote of the inhabitants of Crimea.
That's a classic technique.
Yeah, and then the war in Donbass started. And if we go to Russian media and see how they vocal the situation, they say that Ukraine is a criminal state full of Nazis, banderas, fascists, that Ukraine is very aggressive, is very nationalist, is very radical. And this is, again, the most cynical thing, is that when they call white black, is their own crimes they're trying to put on the shoulders of Ukraine. They're trying to bleach out themselves. So same is happening in Crimea.
And reversing the timelines and
with this
rewriting history.
With this humanitarian situation, they're trying to blame Ukraine for cut-off energy or water supplies, saying that there is an ecology catastrophe that may be caused by the cut off the water.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do you see, what are the legal means, and how do you see this situation evolve in, let's say, 1 to 5 years? Is there any structure, strategy to put in place now to?
There are some points, again, important things that we have to understand. This is not only the home task of Ukraine to get Crimea back, because we had the first Budapest memorandum when we had some states who were assuring our security guarantees. And one of the states, Russian Federation, actually the former strategic partner, dared to aggressively occupy the Crimean territory and then start the war in Donbass. So what we think is that, of course, we can't compare Ukraine and Russia, because Russia is the member state of the Security Council of the United Nations, is the nuclear power, actually, is the country that has much bigger money, budget, resources, influence, and other things. So, of course, we can't, I mean, it's the same if we go as a boxer to the ring in different weight categories, you know. So, of course, we can't compare Ukraine to Russia. So, in this regard, what I think is that this is the purpose and responsibility of the whole international community. Because after the Second World War, all the agreements that were fixed in Potsdam, in Yalta, in Helsinki in 1975, they were broken by occupation of Crimea. So in case if we not only Ukraine, but the international community, the civilized world, the Western world, believe that we have to fight for the international law, which has been brutally violated by Russian Federation. So it's a common goal for everyone. So I think that, of course, today there is a frame, political and diplomatic pressure. Sometimes we have double standards, of course. Sometimes we have pragmatic interests of different states that are much bigger if we go to, to the choice whether to support Russia rights, or to cooperate with Russia or make business with Russia or, kind of back up Russia or to name things as they are, say that Russia is an aggressive state. So, of course, it's about sometimes double standards. And for Ukraine, it means, to actually to all the time actively speak about the aggressive steps and crimes that are the ongoing process.
And I would like to conclude this interview with what I talked about earlier, which is, so it's been now 1 year about this release of these two Crimean Mejlis, of the representative of the Mejlis of the Crimean Tatar People. How can these representatives voice or help raise awareness in the international community on this situation?
By different means, actually, both of them, Ilmi, Umerov and Akhtem Chyihoz, are the active travelers worldwide, I would say. They're attending different forums and platforms, trying to speak of another truth that you don't have a chance to listen if you or see if you watch Russia Today, let's say, or Sputnik or Interfax or whatever Russian media, the foreign broadcasting, I mean. So, of course, they are speaking about the other reality, and together with other members of Mejlis and leadership like Mustafa Dzhemilev and Akhtem Chyihoz. The main thing again is that, of course, if we didn't have this strong position, if we didn't have the speakers, physical speakers, and existing pressure on the Russian Federation, the scale of the repression, I think, would be much bigger. Because we have today approximately 70 political prisoners. We have 113 kids that have been brought up without their dads because they are in prisons. I mean, there are many numbers, but the scale of the repression would be much bigger in case if we didn't have this kind of people like Akhtem Chyihoz or Ilmi Umerov, or the position of the international community that would condemn Russia as an aggressive state.
Well, thank you for coming in our studio today for that reminder. It was a pleasure to host you.
Pleasure was mine.
That was Emine Dzhaparova. She's the first Deputy Minister of Information Policy of Ukraine. Thank you for watching the program and stay tuned for the rest.